Two experts in ICF.
Yeah.
Decades of experience.
Uh-huh.
One podcast.
Yeah.
Two hosts with a lot to say.
Look, I cannot sit through a struggle. I gotta get up and hustle. I gotta push through the pain, cause really that's how you build muscle.
Welcome to the Build with ICF podcast with your hosts, Trevor Brown and Heather Herring Brown. Yep, they're a package deal. With over 20 years of ICF installation experience, Trevor can throw down some expertise on sales, marketing, and training. On the other side of the table sits Heather, aka the girl boss, and she's earned the title as the owner of an award-winning ICF construction company, a drafting and design company specializing in ICF. And the numbers? With a master's in accounting, she does that too. Sleeves up, boots on. This is the Build with ICF podcast.
I don't want nothing for free. I'm here to work. Been through the dirt. I've been through the dirt, yeah.
Good morning. Or afternoon, I guess. I don't know what it is yet.
That's close. It's still morning.
We've been up for a while, so.
Yeah. Already been to the job site and back.
I know. It's been a very productive day. It's awesome.
It has.
And we're back at our home studio.
We
which
are.
is nice.
Yep. Nice kind of sitting at our normal mics and not having to hold them and sit at a table.
Yeah. It's nice.
So it's kind of nice. Nice to be back in the studio. So
yeah. And today we're going to do listener questions.
Yeah. Episode 24.
Oh, jeez.
I'm going to start by giving a shout out to one of our listeners who I was just texting with, Mr. Ryan O'Shaughnessy.
Oh.
He's, known as the, they like to call him the come on in.
Uh-huh.
Come on in. ICF salesman of Montana. Guy, he's welcome everywhere. Ryan shows up and come on in.
Okay.
Anyways, he is in the hospital.
Oh.
Not feeling good. So anyways, he was just texting with me and saying he was listening. So wanted to tell him, get better, get well. He will get out there and start hustling again. So anyways, just want to say hi, buddy. We're thinking of you.
Well, awesome.
So
thanks for listening.
Yeah. Listener questions. We're going to do some good ones. We're going to give some more shout outs.
Yeah, I'm excited for some of the questions today. And, we're kind of skipping around a little bit based on multiple questions on the same topics, but.
Yeah. And it's like I said, good questions. We're getting them, we're getting them in multiples. So it's like, obviously when you see a question that pops up multiple times, it makes you go like, hey, we need to talk about this. So we're trying to get these fitting them in around our interviews. Interviews have been going great. And we've been getting some really good some people that everyone's been asking for, different brands, different things that people want to know about. So keep piling them up. I will say there's a few of the brands we haven't heard back from. I've reached out to, and I'm not really good at chasing people. So if you're listening and you want to get on the podcast, or say the brand that you sell, or you want some representation from a brand that you're not hearing about.
Yeah. If you're a territory manager of a block brand that we have not interviewed and you would like to be on the podcast, please hit us up.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for an interview or for an invite. We will set it up. We're constantly scheduling out, months in advance if we need to. So let us know. We love to have kind of a stable of, if we can, especially on certain days when we can get 2 or 3 knocked out in one day.
Yeah.
So if you've got something you want us to talk about, or you'd like to be on the podcast, or you have a brand that you would like to on the reach out to us, or have them reach out to us. Tell them that you want us to be, or that you want to hear about them on there. So because we would like to get some more of them lined up. So we'll get right into the questions. I'm going to give my disclaimer like I did on the last one. Because I know how sometimes people are. We have a lot of listeners, and I do get a lot of feedback, pro and con.
We love
it. I take all of it. Yeah, I'm a big dude. I can take a lot of weight on my shoulders. So you go ahead and bring it. This is all opinion. This is. I'm going to sound. I don't want to sound rude, but this is my podcast. I pay for it. So I do have my own opinions, and I am the first to admit that I'm not right on a lot of stuff, and we do make mistakes. So if there's something that you hear on here that you disagree with 100%, shoot us. I'm happy to talk about it. We're going to talk about a few things that we got feedback on from people on different things that they say, hey, I talked to this guy, he does it this way. And I'm first to admit that it's not the way I do it, but
every area is going to be different and have different things. Like we don't have a lot of the issues that people have, over along the coast in Florida. So we do things totally different. In Florida, they don't have snow. We have snow. We got snow yesterday.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's going to be 65 in 2 days. It's supposed to be 65 and the golf course is opening. And we had snow all day yesterday. So anyways, just getting to the fact that I just want people to understand, I do not tend to, I mean, I'm my expert in my own area and what we do, and I'm happy to talk about what we do and give our opinions of how we handle it. But I'm also very open to conversation about other things, and even, having people on that do things differently and discussing it. I have a few people I'd like to do that with. So sorry, I'm battling a little bit of a cough throat thing today too. So
yeah, allergy season has started.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
All good. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with our first shout out to Ben Brown.
Okay. And Ben, who is Ben Brown? I know he's a podcast listener.
He reached out to us. He is out. Sorry, Ben. I think it's Wisconsin. Anyways, somewhere. But Ben's a listener, very, very religious listener to the podcast and a big fan. And so we really appreciate him listening. He came up with some great questions. So I'm going to use some of his questions that got down on the list. So starting with, Ben asked about our concrete floors. We were talking, that's kind of how our conversation started with Ben. I was emailing back and forth with him. And yeah, we brag about our concrete floors all the time. We have the Radiant floor system that is phenomenal. And Carl, our Radiant guy, he did a great job. And I look at the manifolds and all the artwork that he did to bring all the tubing and stuff in. It's pretty awesome.
Well, and we did a really good job installing the panels and the piping and running it all over. It was interesting. It was super simple to do, but the plan that Carl gave us that we just had to follow was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, work with a professional. I mean, obviously, talk to somebody who's a Radiant professional that's going to give you the correct spacing, how much pipe you can run from your main supply line, and where you need to have remote manifolds and things like that. There's a lot of different moving parts to the system, but there are a lot of things that for a DIYer somebody can do themselves. We use the Amvic PEX panel for ours, an R10 panel, which basically gives you the insulation on the bottom, has the puck, so it just snaps right in. And it was very easy and simple. A lot of different brands make a panel like that. That was the panel that we used, but different brands are making that PEX panel. So if you're working with a brand, ask them if they're making a PEX panel if you're doing that. But it's just super convenient, because what it does is it puts the pipe down, holds it in place for you instead of trying to staple it or hold it in place. And then also a lot of the times it gives you a little bit of protectant, as guys are walking on top and they put the concrete on, like it's got those nubs actually kind of protect the pipes. You don't have to worry about it. So super easy. But yeah, we love it. We've said this before. If you listen, we're up in the mountains. We're at 5,000 feet. We had snow yesterday. Our temperatures do get up over 90 for a week or two. I'd say out of every year we're in the 90s. Yeah. So, I mean, we still get the little high desert heat up here. I mean, we got sagebrush in our backyard. We're kind of more like, if you're familiar with Denver, Colorado, kind of that mark, we're kind of in that, pine trees and sagebrush mixed together. And so we get real cold winters, long winters is what our big thing is. So the cold is more of our battle than the heat. So we don't have to have the air conditioning and things like that in. So for us, a concrete floor works both ways for us. In the wintertime, it holds that temperature in the floor, and you're walking around, it's nice and cool or nice and warm, and you feel it on your feet. And then in the summertime, it kind of works in reverse. The concrete kind of stays cool, almost like the ambient temperature of the room actually kind of affects the floor, and it just kind of keeps a nice cool floor too. Yeah. So
we have a switch on our Radiant system. We have a wintertime mode, and then we flip 3 different levers and it goes into summer mode, where it bypasses the boiler, and then we're just running the well water. It's not well water, but our community water.
Regular community water. Yeah. So a natural temperature basically, and keeps it cool. Right now,
you hear a lot of people talk about, in Idaho, you start in the morning with your heater on, and then in the afternoon you turn on your AC. We don't have, our floors aren't on, but it's still like, it's comfortable in here during the day, but it feels a little bit too warm for me personally at night, because we like to sleep with it cooler. So, it's that time of year where we start opening up windows and doors to cool it down in the evenings.
That's probably the interesting thing I tell people that I did not know until we had Radiant floor system was we actually keep our floors at 55 to 58.
Yeah, depending on which room, winter. Yeah, depending on which room you're in.
Because the heat, you keep your floor at that sounds cool for the room, but by the time you put in, as it radiates up and it keeps that temperature, the body heat, just your appliances, things that are functioning in your house, we keep our house at about 65 degrees. And we would never turn our floors up to 65. That'd be way too hot. So it's an interesting thing. There's probably someone on here that knows the science behind that. It's a thermal mass thing, but like literally keeping our floors at about 55 to 58 keeps our house at 65, 63 to 65. So real interesting. We actually, another interesting fact that people always picture, these big giant boilers or water heaters and stuff. We have a Navion
tankless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Navion tankless water heater. It is 2 feet by 2 feet.
It's a little bit bigger than like the ones like what I have in our townhouse for just
right. It's a little bigger one. Yeah, but it's a bigger size one. But like Carl put that in and I was like, dude, there's no way. This is a 3,500 square foot house. We're doing the garage, everything. Like there's no way it's going to run that water and run the water for our showers and hot water and all that stuff. He's like, fine, we'll leave a space for a second one. If we have to add it, we'll add it. Well, here we are 5 years later, and we still are running our entire house, including with all the kids here and everything, our showers, our hot water, our, everything on that Navion water heater. So tankless water heater, mount right to the wall. That's what we have in ours. And obviously there's a lot of different systems out there, but
that one works for us. And I think, in our house, it's a little bit different than many. We'd probably have to put our floors down a little bit lower. Cause like we call it the bunk room. It's set up for bunk, it's got 2 bunk beds with queens on the bottom and twins up top, but that's where the kids all sleep when they come and visit us. That room, we typically leave that down at 50 because that room gets warmer. The rest of our house has tall, like I think the main part of our house, we're like 22 feet for the vaulted ceiling. And we have no heat up in our office area. Like it's just the radiant that goes up and heats that whole area up here too.
Yeah, we have no mini splits, no forced air, no nothing. So it's it's been very efficient. So it's kind of that thing when I get into arguments with people and they want to say, oh, you need this or you need that. And I'm like, I've been living in this house for 5 years, running it off of a tankless water heater and keeping the house completely comfortable. If anything, too cold in the summer and maybe a little warm in the winter.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. And I don't know that we've talked about it on this podcast yet, but like our neighbor comes over, like them and their girls come over and the girls are like, you guys need to turn your air conditioning off. It's cold in here. We're like, we don't have air conditioning.
We have to open the doors and heat it up is what we have to do. So super cool. So that answers the question. If we love it, we do love it. There's cons, obviously like working with it, like plumbing has to be in the right place. Yep. We had a situation where I can, people don't see it. It's covered by a rug, but our electrician missed the alignment on the island. Mm-hmm. So we had to do some fixing and cutting after the concrete was down to move the electrical over. So, concrete is not forgiving in some of those ways. And especially where we have a finished concrete, our floor is just finished concrete floor. It does not have an epoxy on it. It does not have any coating or coloring.
It just has a
just
clear,
a sealer.
Yeah,
yep.
Clear.
We wanted the industrial, you call your design a mountain industrial. It's very much, we have a lot of raw metal and concrete. And we like that look. So we did have some places where, the plumber was a little off on a plumbing, so you have to really, dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure you're right where it needs to be. Because once that concrete's there, kind of hard, you got to move some stuff around. So I would say that's the biggest con is knowing that that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. An interesting thing with the concrete floors and kind of, I think with the radiant, when we were at Builder Show or World of Concrete, we bought a thermal imaging camera and I was really excited to take a look at the floors with it. And it was so interesting how you could like the whole floor was all the same
Yeah, you
color.
expect to see the pipes.
I thought I would see the
and there were
pipes.
some areas where there's a real concentration that you can see them, but you can't see like every pipe.
It was only because so you do a remote manifold so that you can do zoning in different areas. So we have a remote manifold that runs from the garage to the center of the house, and then it goes out from there to have, 2 or 3 more zones. And so I turned that on just so I could see what it would look like because nothing was calling for heat. And so you could see where it was going to the remote manifold. It looked like a racetrack. It was a lot brighter orange than all the rest of our
Yeah, but very, very interesting to see. You put four inches of concrete over top of that, and it really distributes it evenly. Like it's just a nice, warm, yellowy orange color to our whole floor. Like there's no you can't see oh, there's a pipe. And then I would say the only other negative with the way we did ours with one continuous slab from the garage into the house into the patios. And what happened was by doing that, we created some cracking at the walls.
Yes.
So you have to imagine you got to taper it down away. You can't have water flowing back in the house. So the concrete guys had to taper the whole perimeter of the house away from the center of the house, right? It's got to be sloped. Where we placed our pressure treat sills, for like doors and stuff like that, everywhere there was a door installed on the slab, we have some splitting and cracking there. So we would probably do, which I don't think it looks bad. It's real natural
the industrial
looking
warehouse look that we wanted, but yeah.
We'd probably do something a little bit different there. Maybe even preset some bolts or something for our door, door and window and stuff where we framed on the concrete where there wasn't ICF walls, where we had the doors framed in.
Yeah, because we have big 16-foot sliders across the back of the house. So with those, we didn't do a foam buck necessarily. We did wood, and then they had to frame in. So
which will bring. It's actually going to be another one of our questions. So
but then another thing on concrete floors, which has nothing to do with ICF or anything, is like for cleanup. We have dogs with the snow outside and stuff. It's just super forgiving. It's easy to keep clean. So I love the concrete floors for that, and they go really well with the aesthetic that we set up. But we put rugs down, big area rugs. If you don't, kind of get an echo sound throughout your house.
Yeah, a little bit.
Lots of concrete.
I guess if there's a con, that might be a con. A little bit of the sound quality of it, but we like it. Works good.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I would say the next question again, Ben asked about 4-inch walls. We get that question a lot because you do see that almost all the manufacturers make a 4-inch concrete wall, a thick 4-inch thick concrete wall. I hesitate, but I would say I wish they didn't in some ways. I mean, I think it's something that most, again, speaking for myself and fellow installers that I've had conversation with, none of us really like using it. It tends to be something that pops up in DIY conversation more than anything. And I think the thought process a lot of times is savings of money.
Yeah.
And it's really not as much as savings of money, especially because as a distributor, a lot of times you don't stock it. So it's a special order item. So you usually charge a little bit more of a premium for the 4-inch block. Usually you can't return 4-inch block. Most of the distributors aren't going to stock 4-inch, so they don't want it back. So you got to be exact. So you are going to be buying some overage if you're using it. And you really don't. 2 inches concrete's 2 inch concrete. I get it. It's amazing how little of a difference that makes when you really quote it out both ways. Yeah. And we've done that with 6-inch and 8-inch. I've had guys that they said, well, I'm going to do 6-inch here. And they're like, we just did a shop where we switched it to 8-inch, and it was minimal what we did difference in concrete. I mean, it was $1,000 or something. It was a small amount.
Yeah.
So I would say that as far as the 4-inch answer goes, I just don't see a ton of use for it. There's definitely not a lot of use for it for exterior walls. If there's somewhere that we see a use for it, it would be more of a dividing wall inside a house or a safe room or something like that you're doing if you're doing something to just keep sound out. I think even if you're doing I wouldn't even use it. When I say safe room, I mean like gun safe room. A safe room for like tornado, hurricane type safe room. I would still stick with an 8-inch concrete wall just to be safe. I just don't see that. The other thing, and again, this is where the big brains can comment on this, but I do know just enough. I know that there is something to be said for the thermal mass measurements of 6-inch versus 4-inch. So when they look at how the opposing temperatures, so say you've got hot on one side, cold on the other, and they in the 24-hour cycle of a day, the sun rotating around, they push one way and then they push the other. That's kind of like a tug of war, if you will. And they're pushing against each other. And usually they say, I believe it's around 5 inches, the other one side they'll never touch.
Yeah.
Right? You're keeping the opposing temperatures away from each other before, like, all of a sudden, say at night it gets cold and the temperatures are coming towards each other, the cold's pushing in, and then all of a sudden the sun comes up and it starts to heat. It will actually retract that cool air back out, and then the heat will push it out. 4-inch, from my understanding, it can actually go through that in a 24-hour cycle. Temperatures can push through the 4-inch. And I can't remember exactly what the terminology of that is, and I apologize. I'm sure there's people screaming at the radio right now, but there is something to do with thermal masses is ideally in that 6-inch, 5 to 6 inch range. In the 4-inch, you start to lose some of the effect of the thermal mass.
Yeah. And I haven't stacked 4-inch, but like I look at the rebar that we put in the walls of a 6-inch, and I definitely would not want to use 4-inch on an
Yeah,
exterior
I mean, we
wall
still get
because
stuff hanging up on 6-inch.
Yeah, on 6-inch. And so I can't imagine that in a 4-inch wall. And, I've done a couple houses where we had interior walls that we did, but we still used 6-inch on those just because it made the most sense. I had that in stock. I didn't have to special order anything. And like you said, it was minimal. With the cost difference for concrete and the block, it was just a lot easier than having to order excess and then not need it and not have anything to use.
Yeah, and it's squirrely. I've used it. I mean, we have used it over the years. Don't get me wrong. It's a little squirrelier. You can imagine you take 2 inches off of it a little bit. It takes a little more. You got to put your alignment system a little closer together. It's just, the thickness of the foam's the same, but just what it's sitting on at the base, you're talking about a 9-inch, base on the bottom instead of a 11-inch base, which sounds like not much, but it makes it squirrelier. I mean, I can just tell you from using it, it's a little harder to stack.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as
well.
as
And I would think,
friendly.
just even jurisdiction wise, 2x6, if you're building with lumber, is the standard for an exterior wall. So that's where the 6-inch, they don't even question it. I would think they're
Yeah, I'm sure there's arguments for it, but I would imagine you would run into more issue. And then talk about the rebar thing. As soon as you cut more concrete out, you're going to have more rebar, so it's even going to be worse. It's going to actually kind of compound on itself. So that answers the question for the 4-inch, hopefully.
All right, what's the next question?
We've got, this is going to be the last shout out for Ben. All right, Ben, we're moving on. We're
giving him this credit, but we've gotten some of these questions
do get him
from
a lot.
multiple people.
I literally was just emailing with him, so it was kind of top of mind. So, but we do get a lot of questions about this next one, which is putting batting down under your siding. Do you need to put batting or furring strips under your siding when you're installing on an ICF?
I guess this would depend on where you're at, because I think that this question comes up because a lot of the graphics from the Canadian ICF companies show this.
Correct. And I do not know anything about Canadian code, but I do know that over my years of travels of reading install manuals on the Canadian manual, a lot of times it does show that. So I think they have some things in their codes where they want that, and they refer to it as an air barrier. So I do understand what they're trying to do is create an air barrier in there. I have been told by manufacturers and stuff that they are not as concerned with that, because on that usually it comes from the stick frame side. Like, it's a stick frame rule because of, if you're familiar how R value works, basically there's air infiltration, period. The temperatures go through a 2x6 wall from one side to the other. Your furnace turns on, it warms up the inside, the outside cools it down, it turns on again. That's what the cycling of your HVAC system is. And that's because there's constantly air flowing through. And that's what they're trying to stop with, say, Tyvek, or, do different, house
Foam
wraps and stuff like that, right? All that stuff they're trying to do. Continuous insulation, which is a big thing in Canada, where they're putting sheets of foam over the top of ICF, or over top of stick frame to make it more like ICF. So a lot of what you see on that, where they talk about an airflow thing, is giving you a little bit more of a gap, because that's how insulation works. Like how open cell insulation works is actually the air flowing through it is what helps maintain the temperatures, right? If you compress a piece of insulation down to 1 inch, that's 6 inches thick, you compress it down, you lose all the R value because now there's no air. So that being said, I think that's where it comes from. We have never put any batting to install our siding. We've always put it right onto the foam. Most people will, the argument is that actually seals tighter to the block, so that doesn't have a place for there to get water or insects or whatever you want to worry about that might get in between the deal. You don't need airflow because there's no air can't go through concrete. So you're not going to get airflow through the concrete wall that's below the foam, which, by the way, 1.5 to 2 inch foam, pretty hard to get airflow through that as well. I know there's some argument for like the seams where the block comes together, but if you're installing your block correctly and tightly, you shouldn't have much of a gap. It should be a pretty intricate interlock that's going to keep things from flowing between the gaps as well. I've seen plenty of thermal imaging of ICF houses. I've never seen lines in the house showing where the blocks are. I mean, that to me tells me I haven't seen that. So it makes me think that there is not exchange of air going through those seams of the block.
Yeah, if you do see those lines, then you've got some voids in your wall.
Probably some voids. Yeah, there's probably some problems. So, I mean, when you see a thermal image, you can just, and everybody can just Google this. Google thermal imaging of an ICF house. I think you'll see there's no lines where each of the blocks are. Now, if you do thermal imaging of an ice or a stick frame house, you will see exactly where all the studs are. That's why ICF is so much better. So no, we don't use that. The next question would kind of is on that as well, is like what for board and bat siding, where you're putting up, you're nailing on vertically, not horizontally. So your webs may not line up. So again, in my experience with the board and bat, you do not have to, you've got enough play in where you nail that siding because of the solid substrate behind it, the ICF and the concrete. That wall's not going to move. It's not going to do anything. You don't have to nail right on the joint of the 4x8 sheet, basically. So when you're putting that on, you actually can come back an inch or two, especially if you're dealing with, 6 inch on center. You should be pretty close. You shouldn't be more than about 3 inches away. I mean, you're going to be pretty close to the edge of that. So usually they'll just nail to the closest stud, but the next one in. Same thing you do with sheetrock. It's no different than sheetrock. Sheetrock, you come in and you butt it up and you screw back to the, you may go back 2 inches from the seam and put that in the stud, put the next one in, go 2 inches or 3 inches, 5, 4 inches, whatever, and then screw on. So it's not an issue. It attaches the same way. The last 2 houses we've done have been board and bat.
Yeah.
So we're actually doing it right now as we speak.
Combination, different.
Yep. So we have board and bat on 2 houses that we're building right now. So we're not just talking, out of line here. We are actually, see how clean I keep it?
Good job.
Isn't that crazy?
I was wondering.
Oh man. If you guys ever meet me outside of this podcast, you're going to be so blown away at my language. But anyways, I do good. I keep it clean on this one.
You curse eloquently, as one of our friends put it.
Yeah. I have a gift. Anyways, I keep it pretty clean. So yeah, we're not talking out of our ear, let's say. And we actually do this. So the other thing is people ask, well, should the bat part be on a stud? No, because your bat has to be a certain measurement every time to be uniform across the house. You can't just mix them up and have them at different. It'll look weird. Crackhead put the things on, it won't look right, and you need to make sure they're all evenly spaced, and then you really don't care. So it's attaching to the siding below it. It's not attaching to the stud. So
yeah, and I think along with the siding question is the like whether or not people use Tyvek or house wrap or whatever you want to call it behind their siding on the ICF. And we have not. It's not, in my experience, it's not a requirement. Now, if we're using wood trusses and stuff, we do put the Tyvek on that part of it, but not on the ICF portion. So, I don't know if you have experience with that. I don't know if that's something that
I think it comes from
Canada again.
I don't know. So here's another thing. I don't know. We do get likes from Cody from Upcode. I think a lot of anybody, if you're listening to this, you probably watch his YouTube channel. He's awesome. He's just been killing it in the ICF world and really getting the name out there for us. He probably was, one of the OGs of putting it out on social media, what, ICF is and how it works, and really dove into it. And I respect him a ton. We really want to have him on. If you're listening, Cody, please reach out. I'm going to try to reach out because this came up because one of the emails we got was that he had said that he puts house wrap on his ICF under the siding. Would love to have that conversation with him and talk to him. I'm really hoping we can get him on the podcast. He's definitely reached out, via, Instagram. He's been liking our stuff and commenting. So hoping we can put that together. I'll reach out to him. I'm going to DM him. Yeah. And if you're listening, please reach out. I'd love to have you on, and we'd love to kind of talk about that. So maybe he could enlighten us on it. I can only tell you what I know. 23 years of doing this. I don't know anyone that does put it on. And I've actually been told by some manufacturers, their comments were, no, we do not want you to put an air barrier or a water barrier over top of the foam. I don't know. They made it almost sound like it was possibly would capture, just give another capsule for you to capture things under or cause moisture to get caught between the two, maybe, or something. Like, say if it was, if there was moisture coming out of the EPS or even coming as the foam,
Well, because as the concrete cures inside the foam, you'll see at the very bottom, you'll see water coming out.
Moisture
Has to come out. But I would think that putting a vapor barrier around the ICF, it would also make it really hard for the guys attaching the siding because
you can't see the
webs.
You'd have to go mark all your studs.
Yeah, and we definitely don't do it if we're doing stucco.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You know, you don't do it then.
Yeah,
So
I don't know. And I'll dig into it a little bit more. I apologize. This kind of came up right before they started recording this. And so I'll do a little more research on it. But like, I can just say I've never, in my travels, I've never seen it done. I've seen it. I had people send me pictures and say, oh yeah, see, this is, well, they were putting it on the gable part of the stick frame part of the house, not the ICF part. So, if you're doing just going up to 9 or 10 feet plate, and then you're, putting your trusses on top of that. So, you'll see Tyvek or whatever on top of that, but it's not something that's commonly done. We've never done it. I don't have any intention of doing it. Not to say we wouldn't change our mind if someone showed us, but going back to my own experience with a flare gun and looking at stuff, I've never seen lines on a house like that I feel like I would need to cover to let the water, like if you're doing it because you're worried about airflow or water coming back and forth, exchanging through the block and the concrete and then the block again. I've never seen anything that's shown me that there's that happening on an ICF house. So that was kind of my take on that. I don't think that's something that we're going to worry about necessarily.
No.
So we will see though, and I'm gonna definitely do everything I can to get Cody on and talk about this, because it's just something that I think he's doing great work out there for us. I mean, people have been very complimentary to what we're doing, but he was putting stuff out on YouTube long before we did this. So shout out, kudos.
Yeah. And it seems, I always think we're going to get through more questions in 35 minutes than what we actually end up getting through. But
I think we're going to get through this. We only have,
okay.
I've got 2 more on my list that I want to tackle.
Okay.
That are highlighted, and I think we can do it. It's going to be a little bit long. Sorry. But going to that window question, we had people ask, what's too many windows for an ICF house?
Oh, yeah. We've had that, in designing. We're working on one right now that there's parts of the back of the house that are floor to ceiling windows on this angled wall, and 3 inches in between each window. And for that, we just put on the plans, and we plan to frame that part of it, because it just doesn't make sense to try to put 3-inch columns in between these windows that are 20 some feet tall. It just works better to double frame that wall and put some foam insulation in there.
And going back to, I keep using the flare gun thing, because to me, it's just, fact is fact. I look at like how the house performs, and that makes my decision. Like, people can argue all day long about, the thermal capabilities of this, and like, and a lot of times that's like sales guys and different things, I never want to build, like, we would not put our name on a house that just looked like a square concrete box with 2x2 windows for some light to get out, or some egress windows in it. That's not what we're looking to build. So, I mean, I don't want people to think that, you build an ICF house, you can't have glass in it. It can't be a cool design. It can't be that.
It 100% can be cool and can be whatever you want.
100%. And the thing is like, I mean, the technology of the windows nowadays, I mean, yeah, if you go buy the cheapest old crappy windows out there, I'm sure, yeah, it's not good, right? It's not good. But the windows, like, and we'll give a shout out to Pella. That's, the Pella Impervias is what we use a lot, and love it. They're great. Whole back of our house is glass. Now it faces north, so we're not, we don't have a bunch of glass facing south, which could get really hot in the summertime.
Yeah, really, none of our windows face due south. Like the front, a little bit on the front of the house, but it doesn't get, the way our house sits in the wintertime, we get a little bit more sun on the south side of our house, where our driveway is, and then in the summertime, we have a covered patio all across the back, so we don't get that direct sun exposure.
Yeah, so I think there can be smart design around it, so you're not taking direct hit from sun on different stuff. I mean, that's common design. I mean, we own a drafting company, so we're used to like designing around that, and we do take that into account when we're designing something. So just do that. Work with a reputable design firm that is going to look at how your house is sitting on the placement on the lot. Yeah,
you may not have many options depending on your lot. If you're in a subdivision. But.
Correct, and you definitely aren't going to try to like just not have windows because of the I would rather have a little less energy efficiency and have a house that I'm proud of and that I like and I can see out my back windows or whatever. So I would say, as far as the glass, I don't think there's anything that says you have too much glass to be an ICF house. I mean, maybe if it was all glass, but for the most part, no. We're going to design around it. There's going to be things where a designer's going to look at something and go, okay, this is crazy to have a 12-inch, 12 foot tall, 12-inch wide piece of concrete between these 2 windows. Just open frame that and insulate it with, closed cell insulation. So there's different things like that go into just doing windows and overall buy good windows.
Buy good
Spend
windows.
on me.
Yeah. And do some research on the buck systems and look at that because, there's so many different things. You can use a foam buck. You can use a wood buck. You can do a combination foam and wood. You can do like all these things that you can do. And it too affects the performance of your windows. And
that's very interesting. Like you go back to, like I said, at Builder Show this year, we finally pulled the trigger on a thermal imaging camera. Yeah. And really interesting just to come back to our own house and just look at it when we got home because it was super cold outside, and we just walked through the house and looked to see where it was, colors were. So obvious where you saw the doors that we had framed with double wood, and then the windows we had framed with foam buck.
Yep. Even though around, when you're doing that, we still did an energy seal. We still had, foam done, but your doors, I think the doors definitely leak more air than the windows do.
Yeah. I mean, we can see the color exchange happening there. And so a lot of it is just make sure you're getting good seal around that. But having that, again, looking at the thermal, the window is yellow. It's not blue. It's not like there's cold air coming through the window. The light blue or the white where you could see the cold coming through was around the buck. It was not the center of the window. So I think people misunderstand that like windows just let cold air through. They really don't. Glass is a very good insulator, and it reflects the temperature pretty well. So
they're varying quality, like you said. Yeah. So use a high quality window. If you're in a super cold or super warm area, maybe you want to go with triple pane rather than double pane. But and
just having knowing where the sun is and making sure that you have a covered area, keeping the sun off the windows. I mean, different stuff like that, or cold air if you got there's obviously the more concrete you have, the better efficiency you're going to have. But don't make your house be super ugly and unusable because of some energy efficiency. Exactly. So don't worry about it. Last question is we had a lot of people ask about, and I got to tread kind of lightly on this one. I just want to be very clear. I'm not trying to offend anybody or any brands.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this question.
Yeah. Composite block versus standard EPS block.
Yeah, we've been seeing in the Facebook groups a lot of talk about this.
Yeah, and it's the ICF versus the ICCF or whatever they call it. I personally, again, disclaimer, my opinion, have not had good experiences.
And everybody knows opinions are like beep, know.
Yeah.
Everybody
we all
has
have them. Most of them stink. I have not had one good experience with a composite block. That is not. I have talked to so many people about it. I see the Facebook groups, and I'm sure there's people starting to pound their keyboard right now to send me a message. But I'm not disputing that you may have had a good experience with that block. We have worked with, over the years, multiples of them. I have come in and fixed multiples of them, or had to come in and change out a house. We had one house that had to be completely torn down. I've just had really bad experience with them. I understand what they're trying to do, and I think it's notable. I think it's just the way we have the webbing. I mean, you got to imagine like how you attach anything to it. Like you need to be asking like, how do I attach my sheetrock? Oh, you glue it. That's just not. How do I hang a picture? How do I do like how do they go together? Well, you glue them together, or you do like. I mean, there's just if there wasn't a better way to do it, then I would say, this is better than stick frame, right? But there's a better way. Like, and for people that have been in this business a long time, we've seen those come and go probably 3 times, at least in the last 20 years. I've seen influx of block like this come into the market. We're in one right now. There just happens to be. I watched them all go out of business and shut down or go away for 5 or 10 years, and then they come back again. I don't know why that is, the ebb and flow of it, but it comes back into the market again, and it goes out of the market again, and it is what it is. Sometimes I think a lot of it's geographic. I mean, I think there's just areas where people make that block, and so they can buy it really inexpensively, and they use it. Is it better than a stick frame house? 100%. If that's what your option is that one or an ICF, a stick frame house, then okay, put some concrete in the wall. But most of these are also what we like to call waffle fries or waffle walls. They're a post and beam. They're not a monolithic solid wall. So they're not like if you could do the little genie finger snap and the block goes away, you would be able to see right through the house. There'd be holes in it, right? The concrete would just be in a cross
Well, a thermal imaging of that would be interesting too.
Yeah, it looks like a waffle fry. That's
Yeah.
why we call them waffle fries. So a waffle wall would just look like a waffle fry. You could see through it every foot, and so I told somebody this one time, they were kind of debating with me about it. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go over here and shoot at this wall with a machine gun. And which wall do you want to stand behind? Mine with the solid 8-inch concrete wall, or that one where every 6 inches there's a 8 by 8 or a 6 by 6 hole in it, where the concrete's not at. So like I said, not going to make any friends with this, I'm sure, because with some of the people listening, but it's not something I think it's a separate product from ICF. I don't really recognize it as a insulated concrete form. I think that it's got its own little thing going on, and I think that's fine. And like I said, I'm all about an alternative to stick frame that's, more safe, energy efficient, and fireproof, different things like that. So I'm all about it. I'm not, poo-pooing anyone that really wants to do it. I say do with what you're comfortable, do what you have support. Back to what we said in our episode, how to choose a block. If you've got a good support system, do your research. Like if a company comes to you and they're telling you about this block, ask them for the last 2 or 3 jobs they're doing. Ask if you can go look at a job that's being done right now. I mean, most of us have stuff going on most of the time, and especially as an industry person, you should have, within a 4 or 5 hour area, there should be a couple jobs going on that someone could go check out, go look at them, ask the people. The last one, we actually did some waterproofing on one not too long ago here, a year or two ago. And that poor homeowner was furious. He felt like he'd been sold. He was told how easy it was. He was told this, he was told that, said, I'll never do it again. I wish I would have just stick framed. It ruined our whole industry. Like it really did. And that's where I get angry about it, is when it causes a problem due to the effect that people feel about it, how it worked, and then they lump us together with it. That's where I get angry.
Yeah, he felt sold.
And he was not happy, and he will never do it again. He will stick frame every house from here on out. So thank you for taking a customer and ruining it, and probably the 150 people he's going to tell about how horrible it was. So it was unfortunate. So that's the kind of thing. Just do your research. I mean, and proof is in the pudding, man. If somebody can tell you, like, yeah, this is this composite block, and here's 6 people you can call, and here's their phone numbers, and ask them what they thought about it. And if they all are like, it's amazing, go for it, man. I mean, I'm not saying it is. I don't think you'll find that. I don't think you'll get 6 guys. And if you do, make sure they're not the distributor. I'm sure if they give you 6 distributors' phone numbers or 6 sales guys from that company, make sure you're talking to a homeowner that's used it. Make sure you're talking to an installer who used it, somebody that lived in it, see people that went through the full experience. Do they like hanging up pictures? Can they hang their TV? How do they attach sheetrock? All these different things. Did they have to fur it out? A lot of these you have to still stick frame inside of them. So what's your, anyway, I don't want to get too into it. I'm not trying to dogpile on anybody. It's a question that's come up multiple times. It's definitely a hot topic in a lot of the Facebook groups right now. Do your research. If you feel comfortable with it, then by all means use it. You won't catch us using it. We don't install it and we don't do it. But
we don't draw plans for it either.
We don't draw plans for it. Yeah. So it's something that, that's my opinion on that. And I'm sure people can chime in on that. But all right, we went a little over. We went 45 minutes.
I think, you kind of started preparing them for that with your podcast with Randy. It went really
that's
long. And then now we're just going to start increasing.
You guys are lucky that it wasn't a 3-hour podcast with Randy, because that guy, I love that guy. And I love listening to him talk. And I think in some ways he likes listening to me talk sometimes. But the two of us could do a Joe Rogan 4-hour podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was a little sad to be gone that day, but not really. No, just kidding. I love Randy. It's interesting. So you guys do a good job. But
no, it was fun. Him and I have got the chance to be on stage together and talk and do stuff. I mean, it's just fun to get to work with him. And like I said, he started me in the business a long time ago. So I think we're going to take a break from the Fox guys. I know everybody, we were getting a lot of grief. Like, are you guys a Fox distributor? Is this a Fox sponsored podcast? Because we had Alfonso and Dalzell and Randy Daniels on. So no, they had reached out to us with a lot of good information that we wanted to get out there. And they're good at getting out the word of ICF and not touting their block, 100%. So we really enjoy having them on. So we appreciate them. We appreciate the support that Fox has given us and the shares and the things that they've done for the podcast.
They have not
been really
sponsored
awesome.
us. We are not sponsored by anyone. We're
I
sponsored
wish.
by ourselves.
I wish. Yeah. If anybody's just wanting to spend some money and wants to sign up, I mean, we're happy to take some sponsorships.
Yeah.
I'll talk about your product on here. And no, I will be selective. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get one of these composite guys. They're going to send us here, we'll buy you.
Here we go. No, so this was our second listener questions. So we'll get back on track here. Our second listener questions podcast. We are going to continue doing these once a month because we do have questions that are coming in. We're grabbing questions that we see on the Facebook groups. So in order to get your question answered on our podcast, you can email us info@buildwithicf.com, DM us on any of our socials. All of our socials are BuildWithICF. And then even if you were asking them also on the Facebook groups, we do grab some ones off there. We watch and see kind of what the questions are.
If you tag us
in.
If you tag us on the Facebook groups, we see it. There's a lot of Facebook groups. It's amazing. I try to peruse them, but sometimes we're getting into building season, people, and my job is actually to go build ICF houses, not to podcast. Unfortunately, hopefully we get that big sponsorship, but no, we are stacking block right now. So keep in mind we kind of whittle out some time with this. I don't always get to see I don't get to see all the the Facebook groups and stuff. So if you do tag us, then that pops up and we can see that usually a lot clearer. I apologize. We try to get to the emails and stuff as soon as we can. We usually do it over the weekend. But yeah, I'm checking that stuff as much as I can. So send us messages and share the podcast. Really, really, really get this out to people. If you know people that are interested in this and they want to know, if you're building an ICF house and your neighbor's saying, hey, what are you doing? Why do you like it? Okay, hey, take a listen to this. A lot of people can't have the time while they're driving around to listen to a podcast and listen to what we're doing. And we love that. To me, that's the coolest thing is when someone says, yeah, my buddy sent this to me and shared it with me or shared it on Instagram, shared it on Facebook. Feel free to share it and pass it on because that's how we get listeners.
And our whole goal is to educate people on ICF and the pros to it. So, please share it.
Yeah.
Follow us on our socials. Send us some emails. And then I guess we'll see you on the next podcast.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great day. And we'll get you on the next one.